Unitarian Universalist Church of Tarpon Springs, located in the heart of the walkable Tarpon Springs Historic District and known as the home of the Innes paintings. We are a liberal community for all ages, promoting spiritual growth, social justice, and the arts. I'm the Reverend Christina Spouty, minister here at UUCTS. I'm glad you are here. I hope you find meaning in today's service. Please consider joining us on Sunday morning when we gather to worship as a community every week, beginning at 10:30 a.m. on Zoom, or drop in for a more personal visit to one of our coffee hours, starting at 11:30 a.m. on Sundays on Zoom. For the summer, our services will be a little bit different than they have been for the rest of this past year. We are participating in basically a big pulpit swap, or a tour of some of our sibling UU congregations. The UU Church of Tarpon Springs is one of 8 congregations participating in this exchange. It gives y'all the chance to get to experience other of our congregation's worship services and provide your worship team with some much-deserved respite from the hard work of churching and ministering in a pandemic as we prepare to return to in-person worship in the fall. I am excited to be sharing these services with you, some provided by cherished colleagues of mine across the country. Some of them are new to me colleagues, and I am excited to get to know them a bit with you as well. Now, let us enter this sacred time with open minds and open hearts.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. 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 Come, yet again come.
You are welcome here.
No matter your religious beliefs or lack of belief, you are welcome here.
No matter your age, sex, sexual orientation, or gender identity, you are welcome here.
No importa tu ciudadanía, tú estás bienvenido aquí. no matter your citizenship, politics,
or relationship status.
No matter your physical characteristics or health, you are welcome here.
Whoever you are, wherever you are from,
you are welcome in this place. Good morning and welcome. My name is Lynn Hopkins. It is my great privilege to serve the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Montgomery as its minister, and I am honored to be here with you today and so glad that you joined us. Welcome to the remote sanctuary of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Montgomery, in my home, situated about 1.5 miles from our house of worship on the lands of the Muskogee Creek people in Montgomery, Alabama. I'd like to invite you into this hour of worship this morning with words from Alan W. Watts. We must here make a clear distinction between belief and faith, because in general practice, belief has come to mean a state of mind which is almost the opposite of faith. Belief, as I use the word here, is the insistence that the truth is what one would lief or wish it to be. The believer will open his mind to the truth on the condition that it fits with his preconceived ideas and wishes. Faith, on the other hand, is an unreserved opening of the mind to the truth, whatever it may turn out to be. Faith has no preconceptions. It is a plunge into the unknown. Belief clings, but faith lets go. In this sense of the word, faith is the essential virtue of science, and likewise of any religion that is not self-deception.
Hey, let's try out a brand new book. Welcome to Time for All Ages. Recently, I went to the Legacy Museum here in town, and they've got a pretty good selection of books. And I bought a few, and this is one of them. The Other Side by Jacqueline Woodson, illustrated by E.B. Lewis. I have not read ahead. I want to uncover this with you. Let's get some context clues. Let's take a look at the cover. What do we see? We see a couple of girls. One is black, one appears to be white. They are separated by a fence. They look like they're out in the country. On the back, we see the words, "An unforgettable story of the power of friendship." What a great metaphor Woodson has created for knocking down old beliefs and barriers that keep people apart. Even young children will understand the fence metaphor, and they will enjoy the quiet friendship drama. Let's go ahead and jump into the story. So we open up to a nice country scene. That summer, the fence that stretched through our town seemed bigger. We lived in a yellow house on one side of it. White people lived on the other. Mama said, "Don't you climb over that fence when you play." She said it was not safe. Well, that summer there was a girl who wore a pink sweater. Every morning she climbed up on the fence and she stared over at our side. Sometimes I stared back. She never got on the fence with anybody. That girl didn't. Once when we were jumping rope, she asked if she could play. "Hey, can I play?" My friend Sandra said no, without even asking the rest of us. I don't know what I would have said. Maybe yes, maybe no. Ooh, look at this picture. The two girls walking through town, apparently with their mothers, looking at each other. Well, that summer, everyone and everything on the other side of that fence seemed so far away. When I asked my mama why, she said, "Because that's the way things have always been." Sometimes when me and Mama went into town, I saw that girl with her mama. She looked sad sometimes, that girl did. "Don't stare," my mama said. "It's not polite." It rained a whole lot that summer. On rainy days, that girl sat on the fence in a raincoat. She let herself get all wet and acted like she didn't even care. Sometimes I saw her dancing around in puddles, just splashing and laughing. Well, my mama would not let me go out in the rain. "That's why I bought you rainy day toys," my mama said. "You stay inside here where it's warm and safe and dry." But every time it rained, I looked for that girl, and I always found her somewhere near the fence. Well, someplace in the middle of the summer, the rain stopped, and I walked outside. The grass was damp, and the sun was already high up in the sky, and I stood there with my hands up in the air, and I felt brave that day. I felt free. Ooh, look at this picture. They're getting closer together. I got close to the fence, and that girl asked me my name. "Clover," I said. "My name's Annie," she said. "Annie Paul. I live over yonder," she said. "By where you see the laundry, that's my blouse hanging on the line." And then she smiled. She had a pretty smile. And then I smiled, and we stood there looking at each other, just smiling. "It's nice up on this fence," said Annie. "You can see all over." I ran my hand along the fence, and then I reached up to the top, and I touched it. "A fence like this was made for sitting on," said Annie. She looked at me sideways. "Well, my mama says I shouldn't go on the other side," I said. "My mama says the same thing," she said. "But she never said nothing about sitting on it." "Neither did mine," I said. Look at that, getting a little closer, pushing the boundaries. Well, that summer, me and Annie sat together on that fence. And when Sandra and them looked at me funny, I just made believe that I didn't care. Now notice she said, I made believe I didn't care. She was probably conflicted, but I made believe I didn't care. I like it. Some mornings, my mama watched us. I waited for her to tell me to get down from that fence before I break my neck or something, but she never did. Well, I see you made a new friend, she said one morning. And I nodded, and Mama smiled. That summer, me and Annie sat on that fence, and we watched the whole wide world move around us. Well, one day, Sandra and them were jumping rope near the fence, and we asked if we could play. That's significant. We, a black girl and a white girl, asked if we could play with a bunch of other black girls. Now, that may not seem like a big deal to you, but in this time and place, that was really pushing it. I don't care, said Sandra. And then we jumped. And when we jumped, Sandra and me were partners, the way we used to be. When we were too tired to jump anymore, we sat up on that fence, all of us, in a long line. Someday, somebody's going to come along and they're going to knock this old fence down, said Annie. And I nodded, yeah. I said, someday. And now we get to the metaphor. I remember earlier I said something about the fence being a metaphor. I won't try to explain it. One day somebody's going to knock this fence down. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll get over to the Legacy Museum and maybe find a book for yourself. And I wish you a really, really good week.
In Unitarian Universalist congregations everywhere, most during their worship service will set aside a time of joys and concerns. It is a ritual of communal prayer, a time when the gathered people come and open their hearts to and for one another and themselves. In some places, the joys and the concerns are spoken aloud, and in other places, the ritual is done in silence, as it is in my congregation. But no matter how we do it, the pandemic has imposed enormous challenges. So I just hope that you will use the chat that's available here to speak aloud the names of those you carry in your heart, the areas of deep concern, the particular events of celebration. Whatever is heavy for you and whatever is lifting you up this morning. This is a time for us to be in our full, authentic selves together in community. Now, of course, sometimes the things in our hearts are too tender to share. Sometimes we must keep things private, but I hope that you will not allow that to exclude you from this practice. Use asterisks in the chat so that you are stating your intention, you are allowing this to come out of your spirit into the air without inviting danger or harm. However you mark this moment, whatever feels most natural for you, let us now join in this time of joys and sorrows.
I'm listening I am listening. Spirit, speak to me. I'm listening. I am listening. Spirit, speak to me. My ears are wide open. My eyes are now open to see what I may be. I'm listening. I am listening. Spirit, speak to me. I'm listening. I am listening. In this moment of Spirit, speak through me. I can hear the voices of all my kind. I'm listening, singing. I am listening. The sweet spirit howling into the wind. My ears are wide open. Oh, the joy. My eyes are wide open. Oh, the love to see and hear for you and me. Oh, I'm listening. In this moment of silence, I am listening. I hear Spirit speak through me. I'm listening. I am listening. In this moment of Spirit speaks through me. I can hear the voices of all my kind. I'm listening, singing. I am listening. The sweet spirit howling into the wind. My ears are wide open. Oh, the joy. My eyes are wide open. Oh, the love to see and hear for you and me. Oh, I'm listening. In this moment of silence, I am listening. I hear Spirit speak through me.
Most of the time I'm disappointed. My standards are impressive, but if standards would suffice, then the whole wide world, including me, would all be good and nice. A lovely dream, still unredeemed. And those who claim to be anointed, most of the time seem to be arrogant or mean. But today, it's simply true that though I'm really good at talking but less good at coming through, and my dishes do not sparkle and my courage does not stay, anyway, it's all okay. Most of the time I'm disillusioned. The life that I'd envisioned isn't falling into place. Though I've made some good decisions, I'm still waiting for that grace they said would come, and I feel numb. The news and talk shows spread confusion, and how I ache to see the land that we've become. But today, it's crystal clear that though I often fail to listen here, and the world in which I'm living gets its kicks from hate and might. There's a light, and it's all right. Most of the time I'm disenchanted. The sacred is in hiding, or it's been run out of town, and the dove of peace is bleeding as she wears a thorny crown. The all in all is at the mall. I sit in waiting empty-handed, and I fear I can no longer hear the call. But today, I know for sure that though my ducks are not lined upright, and my motives are not pure, and my anger is appalling, and my basement is a mess, nonetheless, I am blessed.
So I have a question for you. It may sound like a riddle, but it's not a joke. What do Unitarian Universalists, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Oneness Pentecostals have in common? This guy, Michael Servetus. He's also known by a number of other names, some of them related to the language of the region. Unitarian Universalists, and Unitarians in particular, have claimed Michael Servetus as the first Unitarian martyr of the modern era. That's how I came to know the name many years ago. He wrote a treatise on the errors of the Trinity. And John Calvin had him killed for heresy. Like most of our beloved stories from history, of course, the truth is not quite so clean and simple. Servetus was a key figure in our history, but he wasn't a Unitarian as we would think of it in these days. He did believe that the person of Jesus was divine, was a manifestation of God, the only human Son of God. He just took issue with what he saw as the logical and semantic gymnastics that the dominant church used to construct the concept of the Trinity, one God in three persons. He's honored and regarded as a spiritual ancestor by Jehovah's Witnesses and Oneness Pentecostals because he argued so fiercely against the Trinity, which many saw and do see today as contradicting the principle of one God, which was the central idea of the Judaism in which Jesus lived and taught. And yet he continued to maintain and uphold the idea of the God nature of Jesus. He's honored and regarded as a spiritual ancestor by Unitarian Universalists. Yes, because of his arguments against the Trinity, but more than that, because he made a straightforward, logical, elegantly reasoned argument against the requirement of people to accept the doctrine of the Trinity. Now, Servetus was not trying to start a new religious sect. Rather, he wanted to convince the church of what was so obvious to him and call the church back into the teachings of Jesus. Servetus was a scientist, and he worked to apply scientific reasoning to all areas of life. And he was also devoutly religious. Today we might think of him as a zealot. The truth of the Gospels for him was at the center of everything he did. He did a lot of stuff. He's recognized as a pioneer in the emerging field of anatomy, in the company of Leonardo da Vinci and Vesalius. He was the first European to accurately describe pulmonary circulation. And while it's true, scientists in the Islamic world had already documented it a few centuries earlier, there is no evidence that Europeans had access to that information. He contributed to the existing body of knowledge on the brain and the nervous system, digestion, disease process, formulation of medical treatments and devices for medical use. He was also a cartographer. He made maps. He was a prolific translator of biblical texts and other sacred works. He gained notoriety in the academic community of the day. But his writings make clear throughout that all of his pursuit of knowledge of the human body was an expression of his ardent religious studies. He was trying to understand how the Holy Spirit acted on and in the human body. In his views, all of his discoveries continually confirmed his own theological convictions, which were derived from his study of the scriptures. Servetus is often described as a humanist, and it's true in the historical context of the Renaissance, but it's really a very different sort of humanism from what we would think of today. He was a humanist in that he believed that God was present in human bodies through the movement of the Holy Spirit. He believed that reason and science were holy endeavors, and that studying human biology and behavior was a way of learning about and getting closer to God. Now, tragically, as you are no doubt aware, religious establishment, and especially theocratic government, has a murderous track record of intolerance for ideas different from the ones that they espouse. And it probably did not serve his cause all that well in the end, that Servetus was outspoken about that intolerance as well. Now, he advocated an idea that everyone has some of the truth, but everyone is subject to error. he refused to side with either the Catholics or the Protestants in any of their forms, saying that both sides had much that was valid and true, but both sides also had mistakes that they could not see. We will all make errors, he insisted, so it's necessary to take all perspectives into consideration in our quest. In fact, I really don't think it would be an overstatement to suggest that Michael Servetus may have been the first prominent figure in mainstream religious leadership to call for a lifelong, ongoing, free, and responsible search for truth and meaning, as we proclaim in our fourth principle of our association covenant. But that was not a welcome message by the authorities of his day. John Calvin, who was a major figure in the European Reformation, had once been in a persecuted minority, and he himself had declared a moral imperative for authorities to be tolerant of religious diversity. Once he rose to power, though, he abandoned all such ideas and was fervent in the persecution of those who taught beliefs that he regarded as heresy. Michael Servetus made a true enemy in John Calvin. Servetus had already been convicted and sentenced to death by the Catholic Church for heresy as part of the Spanish Inquisition. After being arrested and sentenced, he managed to escape in prison, left Spain, and he took an assumed name for his own survival. The Protestant Reformation gave him cause for hope. He thought that this could signal a return of the church to its roots in the ancient scriptures. But now he was witnessing the Protestant movement that had held so much hope for him taking the same brutal actions as the Catholics had before. He declared openly a principle that we take for granted when we think about martyrs for justice in our day, that when you kill a man for his ideas, you do not destroy the ideas. You are simply taking a life because someone is different from you. And that can scarcely ever be righteous. And he went further, declaring it's not only unreasonable, unjust, and ungodly, but ultimately futile to attempt to coerce religion. Echoing a central principle in Islam, Servetus was clear that there can be no compulsion in authentic religion. One's convictions, he says, are not things that someone chooses by their own will. Rather, our convictions come to us through a combination of divine revelation and divinely inspired human reason. Compulsion or extortion by any means could only bring the subject of persecution into a state of belief in the way that Alan Watts defines it in our opening words. Under threat, one may convince oneself of a thing that fits the mold of prevailing ideology in order to save your life, but it can never result in faith, that free and creative and life-giving encounter with truth and mystery. And the way he met his end is a story that I find full of intriguing, sometimes startling, sometimes even a little funny details. The bottom line is that he traveled to where he knew Calvin was speaking. Calvin had him arrested, and he was tried and sentenced to death for heresy. And this can be the consequence of refusing to abandon one's truth, especially when you believe that it is a truth with the potential to save humanity from grave error. Michael Servetus never sought to overturn or disrupt the church, but rather to call it back to its authentic and eternal truth that had been corrupted by the human striving for power. And he continues to be celebrated today, not only by religious historians, but also by legal and political historians. He's credited with broadcasting the principle that every person has a right to their individual conscience, as we express in the fifth principle of the covenant of our association. His unorthodox spiritual convictions and religious ideas influenced figures like René Descartes, John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and Thomas Jefferson. The spiritual principles that are inherent in Unitarianism, arising from the work of Michael Servetus, were integral to the founding documents of our nation. And the killing of Servetus brought widespread attention and condemnation from scholars, philosophers, and religious people everywhere the story was told, in his age and in the many years that followed. His life is yet another example of how the attempt to eliminate a heretical idea can ultimately lead to its becoming disseminated and widely accepted in a later age. It's also an illustration of how a government's opposition to a religious movement can be the one thing that ensures its permanence. In Unitarian Universalism, our commitment to those two principles, the fourth and the fifth, are laid out and defended so clearly in the life and work of Michael Servetus. The importance, the necessity of a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process in our congregations and in society at large.
At the start of any given day, there is mystery available. There is a game waiting for an open heart to say yes. Here I am, I'll play. And if we're smart, we'll listen to the way, and all the misery that held us down, we'll let it fade. Let it be outshined by a simple spark of a life that's waiting to be made. It's waiting to be made. What will you make of this day? What will you keep? What will you change? What will you see? What will you believe? What will you make of your dreams? Will you keep sleeping, or will you awaken and decide what you will make? the start of any given day. There is history and poetry, there is a play, but you're not in the audience, you are the star. So get out there and say what you will make. What will you make of this day? What will you keep? What will you change? What will you see? What will you believe? What will you make of your dreams? Will you keep sleeping, or will you awaken and decide just what you will make of this day? What will you keep? What will you change? What will you see? And what will you believe? What will you make of your dreams? Will you keep sleeping, or will you awaken and decide what you will make?
I'd like to leave you with these words from Rumi. Yesterday, I was clever and I wanted to change the world. Today, I am wise, so I am changing myself. Beloved, our service has ended. May our service begin.
I hope that you found meaning in today's service. Again, I invite you to consider joining us sometime on Sunday morning when we gather for worship as a community. The service starts at 10:30 a.m. on Zoom. You are also welcome to drop into our Zoom room coffee hour any Sunday at 11:30 for friendly conversation. Please refer to our website for more information on how to connect with us on Zoom. If you use the Connect Online button, it will take you directly to any of our activities. We look forward to meeting you.